RPGs on early home consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment System were a tough sell for American consumers. In terms of console games at least, the genre was still in its infancy. You know the bigger games, the Dragon Quest series and Final Fantasy on the Nintendo, and let's not forget Phantasy Star over on the Sega Master System too. While maybe a little rough to revisit these days, it's important to acknowledge the roots of the genre and how, in the case of the NES especially, some extra marketing, magazine promotion, and other efforts tried to get players into a style of game they may have never experienced or even heard of before. In 1992, Squaresoft published Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which aimed to be a sort of JRPG introduction, basic in almost every way, if you will. I didn't play this game as a kid, but I honestly don't see the beginner's appeal. I think that the idea of an introduction to RPGs would be handled much better by Squaresoft a few years later in the form of Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. So why are we even talking about Mystic Quest? Well, also in 1992, another game came out for the soon-to-be-retired Nintendo Entertainment System that billed itself as a sort of beginner's RPG. The problem is, it really doesn't play like any other game that came before it. The Legend of the Ghost Line is an interesting title, looking every bit the part of a Dragon Quest-style clone with colorful sprites, maps, and even decent music. In a step away from Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, the dialogue is drastically simple, with almost everyone you encounter telling you something relevant to your quest or the lore of the world, and even then, it isn't that deep. And we can't forget to bring up the box art. Our main character here, Maria, certainly, well, she's ready for her hairband aerobics workout adventure, right? On VHS? Her expression kills me. They really captured the in-game look here, don't you think? Looks just like her. Compare this box art masterpiece to the Famicom version, which looks far more like it could have been a licensed anime game. Maria is much closer to her appearance in the actual title, and the cute comic on the back is a nice touch. As cute as it is, it wasn't based on an anime. Ghost Lion begins with Maria's parents recounting the legend of the White Lion, which once threatened a village until it was driven off by a hero with a spear. They set off down the river to see if they can find this White Lion, and when they don't return, Maria is given the spear of the hero who fought off the lion from legend, and she starts off to find her parents. In the first area of the game, you also acquire a magic lamp, before finally reaching a bridge over a small river, and Maria wakes up in a mystical, fantastical, magical world with butterfly-like pixies serving as save points, huge mushrooms, and of course, dangerous monsters. Her dagger, and other weapons you'll acquire throughout the game, make for decent self-defense, but Maria's real talent lays within summoning the spirits that inhabit the items in the game. The spear, for example, summons Moja, who once fought the White Lion of legend, while the lamp summons Twana, a wizard capable of casting a wide variety of magic. Each spirit can attack an enemy for Maria, or jump to her defense, though they're not very good at that. It also gives the enemies an additional target to take some pressure off of Maria. These spirits will be your main form of dealing damage to enemies, which attack in turn-based random encounters with up to 3 monsters at once. Maria does get some decent weapons, but you can choose to either summon a spirit or use an item on Maria's turn. You cannot do both. If you do summon a spirit, however, they do get to act on that same turn, so calling upon your magical friends is almost always the best course of action, at least in the beginning of combat. I'm a bit tired of talking about combat for a bit, so let's put a pin in that and get a tour in of the world and setting of Ghost Lion. Don't worry, we'll definitely circle back to this unique and interesting battle system in a moment. Ghost Lion's world is separated almost entirely by caves, which themselves serve as small dungeons. Small is the only size of dungeon in this game, honestly, though there are several optional dungeons you can explore as well to earn new weapons or spirits. In the first town of Bread, folks talk about the Stardust being stolen by a goblin, sealing a cave to the town of Davis. So, you get the Stardust back, move a giant, and you're on to the next town. Each slice of the world map is similarly manageable with few exceptions, and every now and then there are small side quests that involve a little bit of legwork to complete, and while the rewards for such quests might be a powerful weapon, some will just reward you with information you may have figured out on your own. The idea of the game being an introduction to RPGs does show a little bit here. Talking to people should give you clues, and Ghost Lion doesn't waste a perfectly good NPC without telling you something semi-relevant to the game. It's all very basic, so there's not a lot of charm built around the characters, though this does allow the game to be very efficient with its information. The manual even gives instructions on how to make maps with graph paper to help the player on their way, though with dungeons as small as these, it hardly seems necessary. It's nice to be able to learn how to do it, but you kinda gotta be able to need it to really learn it, I think. Phantasy Star's a good one. Play that. Quests in Ghost Lion involve finding a witch's glasses, making a rainbow bridge with enchanted water, and draining an entire lake with a magical jar. Nothing too lengthy or complex, but a few will have you traverse some distance to complete. Thankfully, one side quest that you'll definitely want to do is to travel to a witch's forest and trade an item with her to get her broomstick. That lets you fast travel to any place where you can save, and that is going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. The issue with any kind of legwork in Ghostline is the incredibly high encounter rate, which you kind of expect being an old school NES RPG, but this time it's a little bit different. So now that we've wrapped up our tour of the world, let's circle back to combat and talk about why Ghostline's battle system really is one of a kind. And that may not be a good thing. Maria starts with the lamp and spear, which summon 2 spirits to fight for her. She can also find several other items that can summon a variety of creatures. You can divide these into 3 small categories. Attack spirits, whose primary function is to attack. Defense spirits, who try to absorb some damage directed at Maria but are honestly pretty useless and you might as well ignore them. And lastly, magic spirits, who cast spells that either hurt enemies or offer some fashion of protection and have some utility. If you choose to fight and summon a spirit, you consume a certain amount of dreams for that spirit. The spirit can then attack, which lowers the only stat spirits have, power. Think of power as fuel. Each time a spirit attacks, they have to use some power. The monsters may attack spirits instead of Maria as well, which reduces their power too. Once a spirit is out of power, they vanish and leave the battle. One very good thing about Ghostline is that when a spirit falls in battle, you can summon them again at full power. If a monster attacks Maria, it will reduce her courage points, and once she's out of courage, the game is over, and you'll return to the last place you saved with half your money. And like Dragon Quest, you don't lose anything else, so maybe dying is a quick way to leave a dungeon once you've found the treasure within. So courage, dreams, think of these as stand-ins for health and magic points, and hope as a representation of Maria's current level. Now here's where Ghostline gets a little strange. Each spirit's power and strength is based on Maria's hope level, or rather, her hope level after you find the item that holds the spirit. Therefore, Moja and Twana, who you have from the start of the game, will always be at Maria's level. The amount of dreams it costs to summon a spirit is based on that, and no dreams means no spirits. You can restore Maria's courage with bread, and her dreams with dragon's tears, or by visiting a save spring, but no spirit has any magic that will restore courage. Maria's tools are used in battle, but she never gets physically stronger herself. Stronger weapons are the only way she will deal more damage by herself, and in the early game it's very useful to sneak in some attacks in her once you summon a few spirits. So did you catch what was missing there at the end of the battle? Let's see another one. See? You earn money at the end of the battle, but no experience points. This is where I think Ghostline tries to keep being a beginner's RPG, but removes a mechanic that is common across almost all of them. Grinding through encounters will only make you rich in rubies, but not rich in experience. If you play Dragon Quest, you chip away at gaining experience to eventually overcome any obstacle in the way. Death also removes half your money, but the experience of battle means you will eventually prevail over your enemies. Final Fantasy and other similar RPGs, they have a bit of a different system with save points and a game over reverting you back to the state you last saved. It becomes part of the strategy to avoid dying. You need to play those games a little bit more carefully. So if you can't get experience in battle, how do you gain hope levels? By finding fragments of hope scattered all over the world. These increase your courage and dreams and increase the power of any spirit you have at that time. This means it's better to find a spirit's item in a dungeon before finding any fragments of hope. But treasure chests have a nasty habit of all looking the same, don't they? Doing this would make newer spirits more powerful early on, but it's not really necessary to beat the game by doing this. Spirits you find later in the game do get powerful very quickly, and they will always cost less dreams to summon than Moja and Twana, who will always cost the most, but are also arguably the most powerful in the game. There are a total of 25 fragments of hope that you can find, making the top possible hope level 26. But the game is beatable under that. Some of the summoning spirits and fragments of hope are in optional dungeons. Since you can't get more powerful through grinding, it may be a good idea to hunt at least most of these down. Ghostline on NES is an interesting title, to be sure, but do you remember how I said the Famicom box art kind of made the game look like it was a licensed anime title? Well...
What do you mean, another world?
I just mean there are rooms inside that no one has ever entered.
Wow, how neat!
That's right, there's a movie. Released in 1988, Beyond the Pyramids, Legend of the White Line was a joint production between American and Japanese studios, and while the entire film features English dialogue, it was only released in Japan. To put it bluntly, the game is wholly different than the film. and not in the way that some movie games were loose interpretations of things in the film. Ghost Lion is so different that it's almost like they're two totally different works. In the film, Maria, portrayed by an infrequent guest star on Full House, is in Egypt with her mother, who, along with her boyfriend, are planning an apparent wild expedition to find a white lion. Maria does not get along with her mother's boyfriend.
Stop that. We're in a restaurant.
So what? You're always trying to tell me what to do.
And Maria seems to be constantly surprised with how soda pop works. Maria really wants to see the inside of the pyramids after her mother talks about a door to another world. Maria meets an older tour guide who could take her to the secret door between worlds, but he might need some convincing first.
But I must go today.
I can tell you're not ready to go into the pyramid.
What do you mean?
You're a child. You need to grow up a little more.
Excuse me, sir, but I'm not a child. I'll have you know that I'm 12 and a half, and I'll be 13 in September.
Growing older is one thing. Growing up is a totally different matter.
You're a funny old man.
After exploring and getting freaked out on the inside of the pyramid, Maria wakes up, not inside a world filled with goblins and kobolds and trolls, but Africa. And her parents went on an expedition to find the fabled white lion in a place called Hell's Gate, where entry means certain doom, and the villagers refuse to help Maria.
No one returns alive. There is nothing we can do to help.
What? You're not gonna do anything?
It is a law of nature.
Maria recruits Moja, a clever boy from the village who claims his father was a great hero and proudly wields his spear, while selling cheap imitations of it to the gullible tourists.
Well, it's the only one in Africa. It has protected my family for many generations. It will protect your family too. Yeah, it will bring you good luck.
Okay, I'll give you $20 for it. No more.
Okay.
They also recruit Swana, an elder of the village who happens to look exactly like the tour guide, though Maria can't seem to remember him, because this reality is just a little bit different than the one she came from. I think that's the case. Anyway, the three of them then begin what is honestly an incredibly boring series of animal-wildlife shots and little action or any character development whatsoever. Eventually, Swana is hurt protecting the children from a lion and vanishes overnight, and Moja and Maria must forge ahead alone. So yeah, the video game takes place in a magical, fantastical world of dreams, while the film takes place in a remote part of Africa. Moja and Twana, who gets whitewashed in the game and on the Famicom box art, but not on the back of the box, I think. Anyway, they're reduced to summonable spirits instead of actual characters, which means Maria never really interacts with them. And Maria doesn't suddenly summon a gnome from a gold rock or a slug or a giant from a crystal or anything like she does in the game during the course of the film. She mostly just complains.
Damn you!
In the NES game, you eventually fight a dragon who can only be defeated by using a statue that only someone with magical power can use. When you use it, Twana jumps from his lamp and vanishes with the dragon. Once you get through a few more dungeons, you'll eventually face the white lion itself, the hardest enemy in the game. In the film, the white lion attacks Moja, and Maria takes his spear to fight it. In the game, the battle plays out like all the others. Defeating the lion reveals it was actually Twana, and he was giving you a trial and teaches you a lesson about hope and courage and dreams and all that fun stuff. He eventually also gives Maria a pendant, which is given to her in the film by Moja. Maria wakes back up in the pyramid after the fight with the lion and seemingly learned a valuable lesson about something. She meets Moja in this world, but he doesn't recognize her or the pendant. Maria eventually finds her mom and Mom's squeeze, and all is good and well, but no word on Mom's expedition to find the white lion in this world either. The NES game ends with Maria's mom saying she nearly drowned in the river and scolding her for chasing a legend. Ghost Lion does some interesting things. The summoning mechanic is neat, though knowing how spirits power up is basically a hidden mechanic that's never explained. Adding more monsters and including experience points and normal level ups could have made Ghost Lion more in line with the RPGs it was trying to introduce players to. In 1989, America was just getting introduced to Dragon Warrior on the NES, with Final Fantasy following a year later. Each of these games came far out after their Japanese versions, and the case remains true for Ghostline, whose Famicom version was released in 1989, well before the late NES era 1992 release overseas. Coming out well after the Super Nintendo's launch didn't help, and magazines didn't push the title that much. Nintendo Power barely gave it a glance, hardly even granting a column's worth of talk to it. Nowadays, a copy of Ghostline isn't cheap. It's never been re-released or ported to any other system, so buying the game itself is something reserved for the most serious of NES collectors. In the movie, I had a lot of trouble tracking this one down, but YouTube user Ultimate Teacher OVA actually captured the movie and uploaded it. A link to their channel is in the description of this video. And yes, there is a discrepancy between the name of the movie and the name of the American game, and the fact that the game mentions the White Lion but it never mentions the words Ghost Lion. The only time you'll see it called the Ghost Lion is, well, the title of the NES game, and one part of the manual that actually combines the two. The Legend of Ghost Lion is a flawed game, I think you'll agree, but does it accomplish what it sets out to do on the back of the box? To be a beginner's RPG, to be an introduction to the genre. If we look at the world, the characters that you interact with, the fact that there really isn't a lot of jargon going on there, and even the size of the dungeons, I think Ghost Lion kind of works in that regard. Even the combat removes a lot of the stats and things that might overwhelm a new player. But then it takes combat and treats it like something totally different, something that you'll have to encounter a lot and have a very poor ability to run away from. Both things that are probably going to turn off new players. And the film, when it wasn't being a nature documentary for 45 minutes, I suppose it was at least a movie. I don't even think the Mystery Science Theater 3000 treatment could save that piece of cheese. If you're going to pick one part of the Ghostline catalog to collect or focus on, let it be the NES game. It's an interesting, if not flawed, look at the formative years of JRPGs on home consoles.